when we let go of others' expectations on us and just do our best, because we are driven people. If you run a business, if you've grown a business, if you've scaled a business quickly, you're probably pretty ambitious. So why are we so hard on ourselves for that? And so I've just kind of taken the approach of, I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to apologize for choosing myself, and I'm not going to waste my time trying to prove to others how I've got it all figured out, because it's something I'm working on a daily basis.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Time. Time is so important that we sometimes let guilt get in the way of how we spend our time. Because time is not just seconds on a clock. It's really about the energy that we put into stuff and the energy that we have to put into other things in life. When you think about your time, this series of optimizing your time is really about you becoming a better version of yourself. As a leader of a fast growth company, you probably get pulled in a lot of directions. So what I thought I'd do was take a peek into what people are doing that are in your role of the Inc. 5000. They're CEOs of highly successful companies, to help them share back what's moved the needle for them. We're also going to look at some of the things that they're working on right now, and through a little bit of a lens of a coach, if you will. And that will help you understand how to use your time. You will learn from both sides of this today in our interview with Renzi Stone. He's the CEO of Saxum. Saxum's an integrated marketing platform. They're obsessed with good, but we're going to share with you some of the things that he's done to move the needle as it relates to optimizing his time, but also what he's working on. In fact, one of the things I love most about this is it's probably not something that's going to be revolutionary, but it's going to be something so simple that you can actually learn from today's interview and the coaching session in part 2 and apply it immediately. And the whole framework is laid out for you. If you have any questions about that, make sure you reach out to me. I'd love to support you. I'd love to figure out what your game plan is to be the visionary leader of your business. If you want to have those conversations with me, just go to genehammett.com, look for Start Your Journey, and you can register your conversation with me right away. And it costs you absolutely nothing. Just go to genehammett.com, start your journey. Now here's the interview with Rinzai. Hi, Rinzai. How are you?
Gene, great to be back with you.
Well, I was going to mention that you've been on the podcast before. You have talked to us about some of the leadership and culture aspects of why your company grew so fast. A little bit different today, but I want you to go ahead and tell us a little bit about Saxum.
Well, Saxum is an integrated marketing communication agency headquartered in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, with team members around the U.S. I think we're in 9 different states. Mainly focus on B2B. We believe that the world is changing. It's changing quickly. And we believe that having a purpose beyond the profit is important. And so that's not a political statement. It's a strategic statement for our company, that we want to work with clients who are doing good, both for their employees and their customers, as well as the world. So we call that obsessed for good. Saxum's about 50 people. And as of December 18th, when we close an acquisition we're making, will be about 100 people.
Well, I appreciate that context. I do a lot of interviews about, real purpose-driven companies. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing here. A little bit different take. This is a part of our Optimize Your Time series. So the key question I gave you a chance to think about was, what's the one strategic thing you've done recently that has made the most impact in your own time that you can share with us in today's interview?
Yeah, thanks, Gene. I have been thinking quite a bit about that question and what are the behavior changes that I've made. And I think the big one is the integration of my personal and professional life unapologetically. So the word unapologetically is the key word there. I think up until, call it the last 6 months, I I apologized for the time I spent on myself during the workday, and I apologized to my family for the time I spent on work during my off time. And I realized that that wasn't healthy either way. As someone who is driven and ambitious, it's a lot harder to segment your time to work and personal. So I think what I've spent my time is integrating it all together. And one of the examples I gave you when we were talking a little bit before we started today was I've started working out in the middle of the day. I hate waking up and working out. I like working when I wake up, but I don't like working out. I also don't mind telling a client or a friend or or a colleague that, hey, let's have a walk for that meeting instead of doing a Zoom. Let's get outside and go to a park and have a walk, and we'll walk 6 feet apart right now during quarantine. But then also, just for me personally, I'm now spending about an hour a day, usually during the workday, physically working out.
Well, there's a few things I want to dive into that before we get into the actual working out piece of it. I want to go back to something you talked about, being unapologetic. I know I've experienced this within my own life, and there's some guilt associated when we don't feel like we're showing up at our best. And so I want to talk about that. Is that kind of what you felt when you were apologizing to your family or even to your team members about how you spend your time?
Yeah, I recently read a quote, and I don't think that I forget who said it, but it's something along the lines of be a good person, but don't waste time trying to prove it to others. And so the guilt that comes with making decisions about how you spend your time often comes with guilt associated with it. And Gene, I'd challenge you to a little experiment. I would get into your email, and I would type into the search bar the word sorry, and see how many times the word sorry comes up in your search results. My guess is if you're like me, you have tens of thousands of emails that are archived, and you'll be amazed at how many times you use the word sorry. And then do a similar exercise and put in the word thank you. And I guess what I'm getting at is when we let go of others' expectations on us and just do our best, because we are driven people. If you run a business, if you've grown a business, if you've scaled a business quickly, you're probably pretty ambitious. So why are we so hard on ourselves for that? And so I've just kind of taken the approach of I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to apologize for choosing myself, and I'm not going to waste my time trying to prove to others how I've got it all figured out, because it's something I'm working on a daily basis.
I did a quick search on my email while you were talking about that, Rinzai, and I can proudly say that there's not too many of my emails that say sorry. I get some coming back, so that does prove your point that this is a very common thing. I also want to kind of dive into something you were talking about there, and this relates to the health thing. I just turned 50 about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was on the way to a beach vacation with my wife, and I was thinking about goals for the next year. And I know I'm not alone when I say this, but I was thinking about my business goals, because that's so easy to think about what's most important. And then I said, why aren't I putting my family first? And then I started thinking, why aren't I putting my health first? And because those are not natural, to be honest with you. I love my family. I want to spend time with them, but it's so easy to put in a lot of time into our businesses and our people and whatever we're doing there. But when you have experienced this integration of business and personal, what else could you share with us around, kind of putting yourself first?
Well, it's a great question. So on today is November 30th when we're recording this show, but on December 10th at noon until December 11th, at 5, I'm doing something that I haven't done every year, but more years than not. I'm having a personal retreat day. I'm going to a friend's ranch in Western Oklahoma, and I'm not going to connect to the internet. And I've got a list of things that I want to think about, and it'll be my time to reflect on what kind of year I just had. It'll be my time to reflect on what kind of parent I was, what kind of husband I was, what kind of leader I was for my company. I'm also somebody that sets goals on an annual basis. It'll be a chance for me to review my goals from 2020 and see how I did. Those aren't things that I look at on a daily or even weekly basis. I probably last looked at my 2020 goals maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. But it'll be a chance for me to take stock in those. And it'll also be a chance for me to capture some new ideas about things I want to work on for next year. I'm a believer that if you don't set goals, I don't have any problem with goal abandonment. I abandon goals all the time. So it's kind of a Douglas MacArthur moment of it's the planning that matters, not the plan. And so I'm a big believer of writing down the things that I want to accomplish. And as it results in, as to answer your question about how to prioritize with family and self, it's something that all successful people have to do. Successful being a very subjective term, but anybody who would end up on the Inc. 5000 list is somebody who has prioritized the growth of their business. And I've asked that question to my peers who are in that subset of leaders. And what I hear time and time again is balance. It's something that everybody struggles with. And some are more self-aware about it than others.
Well, I appreciate you sharing with us the one thing that's moved the needle for you as it relates to your time. And I could go deeper into this all the time because I know my own workout schedule is different from yours, but I want to make sure that we have enough space to talk about what's next for you. When you think about the strategy that you're working on now or a skill as a leader that will give you more time, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I heard a great comment last week, and I'll go ahead and give it attribute. I was talking to Chad Richardson, who is the CEO of Paycom. Paycom is one of the fastest growing public companies in the United States. I'm not sure what their market cap is, but it's into the billions at this point. But Chad said, Chad is somebody who I was one of his first customers. They're a payroll processing and other HR benefit company, all automated on the cloud. I was one of his first customers, and we were having a problem as part of our merger. And so Chad said, if you ever have a problem, reach out to me. Well, some CEOs, they don't really mean that, but Chad does. And so we were having a problem. So I texted him. I said, here's the problem I'm having. He immediately called me, and he had 3 or 4 follow-up questions. But he said something really important that I think will make it onto my list for next year of things I want to work on. And the answer to your question is this: I'm not a micromanager of people. I'm a micromanager of processes. And I love that line because I believe at my core that you have to delegate to capable people if you hope to grow your business at all. But no business is going to grow and meet its potential if its processes are flawed. And so if I could be a micromanager of processes in the next year, that would be a really great goal for me to set.
Let me take a second here to remind you that if you want to keep getting episodes like this, you want to evolve as a leader, then you want to make sure you go to genehammett.com/subscribe. genehammett.com is my home base. The podcast is Growth Think Tank. And if you want to be a visionary leader, if you want to keep learning from all of these amazing founder CEOs, then go to genehammett.com/subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
Now, I've got to ask you on this because this is kind of a coaching moment for the rest of this interview where I hope you get more clear about what you're going to do to make that happen. This is different than what you told me 15 minutes ago before we cut on the retimer, which is okay. I can handle the curveball, but you had said deep thinking was something that you were working on. Is there a relation to you being a micromanager in processes to the deep thinking that you really want to have, or are they two separate issues?
Yeah, so we all basically function in 5 categories of time, Gene. It's called the 5 gears by Jeremy Kubicek. The 5 gears says we have rest, we have social time, we have business social time, we have task-oriented time, and we have deep thinking. Those are the 5 gears in order. I'm pretty good at the 4 of those. Most of us spend most of our time in 4th gear, which is the task time. Deep thinking is the one you have to set aside time for. And micromanaging process is not something that you do on the fly. You don't write down on your to-do list, micromanage process today. No, you write down on the to-do list, prepare for interview with Gene today. So absolutely it's tied together. It's not even a curveball, Gene. I think it's definitely connected, which is, can I put the deep thinking around what are the processes, knowing I'm somebody who is entrepreneurial and tends to make new processes like a lot of entrepreneurs do. How can I be a better micromanager of process? And that's going to take some reflection and some thinking. Where do I want to stick my nose? What do I want to stick my nose into? I'm not sure.
I got to go back to something you said before. I take a lot of notes. This is just like my coaching clients. You had said something like, we spend most of our time in that number 3, which is the task time in your 5 gears. And I noticed that with a lot of leaders that they've got a really good picture of how to do the work, but they don't have a picture of what they could be doing if they weren't doing the work. They also know the importance of empowerment. You've even mentioned that to us today. I want to make sure I ask you the question that really makes the most sense here, but becoming a micromanager of processes, why do you think that's most important for you at this stage of the company you have?
Well, I'll tell you on December 12th, if it makes my most important list. I think the reason it came up today was I'm thinking about integration of my company with the company that we're buying. And I'm thinking about what things I need to spend time on and what things I don't. And it makes a lot of sense to me if I have the right people in place, which I'm quite certain I do. It makes more sense to me to focus in on the processes. How do we hire? How do we onboard? How do we measure? How do we celebrate? Those are things that you can put process around. And so it makes sense to me that I should spend some more time deep thinking on those issues. Will it make my number 1 thing I want to focus on? I'm not sure. I've been in task mode too much to truly think through that.
So let's back up for a second here. I can totally serve you on this whole, becoming a micromanager of the processes. And it makes sense for you to be focused on that as your company is going from 50 to 100 employees through this acquisition, because there's a lot of processes that need to be improved and merged together. Because one of the biggest danger areas of any merger is, how does the culture and how do the processes actually fit together? You're probably aware of that, right?
Absolutely.
So the real question here is, if you're so good at task, I want to go back to the deep thinking. Not that I'm trying to do an end around here, but I think if you created more time for deep thinking, you would actually have more time for focus on the processes that need to be improved inside the organization. Are you with me on that?
I am. Yeah, I totally agree.
So we schedule time to do interviews, right? Like today, we schedule time to do our workouts. I know that you're going to go to a workout later this afternoon. You probably even schedule time for other things that are most important. Do you actually schedule time other than your personal retreat offsite for deep thinking on a regular basis?
I would say I have time set aside in the mornings. That's when I like to do my deep thinking before my kids get up. And but could I schedule more intentional time? Absolutely.
So you do this before the kids get up. I get it. House is quiet. Is there a reason why you like to do it that time? Is that when you're most creative and most kind of mindful of your own thinking process?
Yeah, I think that's right, for sure. Morning is definitely better than evening for me and for deep thinking.
So one of the things that I've actually talked to with other people in this series is about the zone of genius. Have you ever thought about your zone of genius, your hours of genius?
I've not.
So it's a pretty simple concept. I'm going to share it with you today. And it really is a game changer when you understand it. Is what are the specific hours, 2 hours, sometimes 3, that you do your best thinking, you do your most creative and innovative? Do you know what those hours are?
I think for sure 6:30 to 9 in the morning.
Okay. So the question being is, a lot of times if we know what those times are, we let other things actually take up that time. We don't protect it the way we want to. Now, given the fact that you've got kids in the house, I don't know if you're still working from home or if you're back in the office, does spending family time encroach on that 6:30 to 9 range, or is there something else that gets in the way?
Yeah, it's definitely not completely pure.
Okay. So what do you have before people wake up? Do they wake up at 7 or 7:30 or?
Yeah, usually between 7:15 7:30. But
Okay.
thinking to me doesn't necessarily have to be solitary. It
Mhm.
just needs to be, I'm not doing something like I'm doing right now, which is task oriented. I'm doing an interview. It has to be, I have my list of things I want to be thinking about. And so I'm taking that time to think through them.
My reason for going through this with you, Rinzai, is to help you get more clear about that time to think.
Yeah,
You can
really
always
good.
put something inside of there, and it changes from day to day, from week to week. And the idea would be to actually be intentional about that time. So what I'm kind of leading you through here, the process is, you already know your best time to think, but you also know that it's kind of, you've got your family time kind of mixed in there. When you think about doing just from 6:30 to 7:30 in the mornings, would that be enough time for you to kind of like do that processing that you need to do?
If I was very focused during that time, yes.
I also want to be really clear. Some people need to be active when they do this. Like, my best ideas don't actually come when I go, all right, sit down at the desk and let's have an idea. Do you need to be like walking, or do you need to be doing something else before those kind of that thinking comes in? Or can you just sit down and start working on whatever you want to think about?
Generally the latter.
Okay.
Now I am a very good shower thinker, but the ink runs, so I try to get out and sit down.
So when you think about, there's a time of day when you do your best thinking and you're not working out, because we already know that you work out in the afternoon. What would your life look like if you were able to commit to 6:30 to 7:30 a.m. in the mornings just to think about the most important things for your life and your business?
Well, there's no question it would improve things. There's no question.
Why do you think it would improve?
I would have the intention in place and the routine, the habit formed to do that kind of thinking at that time.
I don't know why I'm going to ask you this, but I'm kind of curious. I don't know if 5 days a week is the best rhythm for this. I do know within my own work, Rinzai, I do my best writing and my best work from 8 to 11.
Okay.
I like my workout in the morning. I like to get showered as quickly as I can and get to work. And I actually feel frustration if I'm not able to do it, because I know that's my best time. I write for Inc. magazine. I write for all these publications, and I've convinced myself I don't write in the afternoon. I don't write at night. It just doesn't work well for me. It's a lot of rewriting. So I have to do it in the morning. So I end up protecting that time. My question behind this is, are you think you could actually commit to protecting that time? I'm not going to say every day, but 2 or 3 days a week.
Definitely.
When you think about this time to think, I wish I could say it could get done in 5 minutes, but usually it takes a little bit longer than that. What's the minimum amount of time that you would give yourself to just do the thinking that's necessary for you to be a stronger leader?
I think if I just had 30 minutes, that's a good start. But I shouldn't have time. I shouldn't have a problem holding an hour. There should be no reason why I couldn't do that.
What if we did this? And again, this is that coaching session. I would go deeper into this with you, Rinzai, but I just want you to get really clear about if you want to work on more thinking time, and you can apply that to this, the processing, the micromanaging of the processes of the company as they integrate together. But if you could give yourself 30 minutes a day, every day for 5 days, and do that for a couple of weeks, do you think that would work with you?
Willing to give it a try.
Would you be willing to schedule it on your calendar and commit to it just like you would commit to having a date night with your wife?
Yeah.
This should be pretty easy for you because you said you already get up early. You get up before the family gets up, and it would be that first 30 minutes of your day of you kind of getting into a place where you could actually do that thinking. Does all that kind of make sense for you?
Yeah, and I'm pretty disciplined, so there's no reason I couldn't do it.
I want to give you another step further because I think those listening in here go, these are all pretty generic. Is there a specific place in your house? Because I'm assuming you're doing this at home, but
Yep.
Is there a specific place you could go to and say, that's where I think the best? That's my thinking chair. That's my thinking place.
Yes.
Where is it?
In front of my fireplace.
So the reason why I bring that up is I remember when I wrote my book a few years ago, instead of going to the coffee shop, which I normally write articles and do all this stuff, I went to a different coffee shop to trigger my brain into, I'm not here to check email. I'm not here to write for anything else other than my book. And I committed to myself that I would only write my book at that one different coffee shop. It may sound weird, but I got into a rhythm of doing this, and I was able to get my book written in 6 3-day weekends. I was able to write the book over that. Now the editing process is a whole nother game, but what we're talking about here, Rinzai, is you wanted more time to think. You wanted to put that fifth gear into place on a more regular basis. Do you feel like we've got a plan for that for you?
Yeah, really good, Gene. Thank you.
Has this been helpful?
Yes, it's been great. As you and I have gotten to know each other, everybody learns differently and everybody leads differently. And so little tricks and tips that can help you reorient are helpful. So this is wonderful.
Well, I'm going to wrap up today's episode, and I really appreciate you being here, Rinzai.
Gene, hey, I enjoyed it.
So what you've just experienced and watched over there is me talking to Rinzai about the one strategy that's moved the needle for him. Hopefully you can learn from that too. But also the coaching that we did in part 2 was really helping him get more clear about something he wanted to do more of, wasn't making the time. This is, I wouldn't say the best example of what coaching is, but I will say it's a powerful example of just taking a different perspective, having someone that's not emotionally attached to it, helping you see what you haven't been doing and making a commitment that will move you forward. It doesn't work the same when you try to do it yourself. So if you want to have those conversations with me, make sure you reach out to me. Just check out the free resources I have at genehammett.com. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.